Hi and welcome to another one of my online painting lessons. For this lesson we're using a 16 by 20 inch canvas. This is a pre-primed stretched canvas on stretcher bars. I'm going to be starting out today with a round brush, kind of a large round brush. For my colors I have ultramarine blue, cerulean blue, and titanium white. And what we're going to do is set up a relatively simple background since we're going to be focusing in on the tree quite a bit. So what we're going to do is start off with some ultramarine blue. We're going to mix some of that cerulean blue in there and grab a bunch of white to create our sky color. Go a little bit more white. Okay, and what we're going to do to start off with I'm actually going to go a little bit more of that cerulean blue. Alright, so what we're going to do to start off with is just block in some open spots of sky. Basically we're going to have lots of clouds. It's going to be clouds floating through pretty much all through the sky. So just some random spots of blue. We want to make sure we got a good solid amount of paint in those sections. Then I'm going to add more white, and I'll open up the sky a little bit down here. Okay, so just an interesting sky shape, some clouds floating across basically, and you'll notice that it's different than the reference photo, which is what I like to do anyway. These backgrounds, I'll go a little bit lighter down low here. I'm going to add the tiniest amount of teal to that color and some more white for down here. We'll open up the sky a little bit more down low. Adding that teal kind of gives it a different little touch of color. Alright, so we've got some clouds floating through here. Next, what I want to do, so I want to take my sky color, I'm going to add a whole lot more white to it. And now what I want to do is fill in, we'll go even more white. I'm going to fill in these open spots. This is going to be clouds. And what I want to do is just kind of push it up close to the edge without overlapping into the sky yet. So getting it close to the edge and really making sure there's a thick layer of paint within the cloud. And again, these clouds will end up adding some details to these later. We're just blocking in shapes for right now. So going all the way down here, coming close to the edge. All right, we'll go a little bit below. We'll probably have a hill crossing over that. But for now, we'll keep it just like that. So what I want to do now, I want to wipe my brush off. I want to take just a small amount of this paint, and I'm going to just lightly scrub along the edge here. So my key to this part is softening the edge, so that way my clouds have a nice soft edge to them. So light pressure as you go out. You can use just the tip of the brush in some of these tighter areas, but we're going just over the edge now. You can have some of these little pieces breaking off. So just trying to soften the edge with light scrubbing. You can also kind of just tap and pull, and that should also give you a relatively soft edge. So you can kind of mix and match those two techniques, sometimes scrub. And then sometimes tap. Okay, you should get some nice, interesting shapes. And again, this is when doing a focal tree or a landscape where the tree is the focus. I'm not worried about so many details in the background. So just getting this blocked in along these bottom edges again, just light scrubbing. Soften the edges. Sometimes that sky color is still wet, so you can really soften that up a lot. Just using the tip of the brush, softening up the edge. I want to make sure all of my white canvas is covered up in the sky area at least. All right, we'll call that good. What we'll do now is let that dry. We will probably come back to that a little bit later and add in some details. For now, we're going to leave it as is, and then we will work our way through the painting and come back and add details later, because a lot of the tree is going to be covering up the clouds, so don't really want to worry about the highlights quite yet. We'll add in through the foreground here, add in the tree, and then we will work around the entire painting. All right, next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little cerulean blue, ultramarine blue, and some yellow ochre, and some white. And this is going to be our initial hill color. I'll go a little more ultramarine blue. I just want to test the value there. It's a little dark, so I'll go a little bit more white. That's much better. All right, so with this, I'm going to create a hill, and I'm not necessarily going directly by the reference image. I'm just kind of creating my own hill using the bristles of the fan brush. I'm using a fan brush here to create the almost like treetops. It's supposed to be treetops up on top. So overlapping a lot. You don't want the exact pattern of the fan brush to dominate. What you want is just little sporadic points sticking up past that border. Okay, I'll go a little bit further, go all the way across. You can see little slight variations in the shape of the hill, nothing too dramatic. What I'm going to do now, take a little water and a little more white, touch more blue, and I'm going to go along the bottom. And then kind of blend up, so creating a little bit of atmosphere by making the bottom portion a little bit lighter and a little bit bluer. Okay, now I'll go a little bit more yellow ochre. A little more cerulean blue. So just a slightly more greenish hue. And I'm just going to tap some textures into the hill. Just so it's not super flat. So this is giving it a little bit of depth, and not really worried about a light source so much yet, kind of going left to right. So kind of starting on the left side, dispersing the paint a little bit so it kind of gets a little more sporadic to the right, kind of creates a sense of shadow, but not being really dramatic with shadows, just trying to create a little depth with the hill. All right, I'm going to want to let that dry completely before doing anything that paints over that. So that's going to be pretty much it there. We might come back later and add some more detail to that, but for now, just a really subtle hill. All right, next I'm going to do just a little tree line going across. A lot of the focal point here is going to be the foreground, but what I'm going to do is take some of my ultramarine blue. I've got a small flat brush now, and I've got a brush where the bristles will splay out, something that's kind of a little bit of a stiffer bristle. So I'm going to take my ultramarine blue, cerulean blue, a little bit of my yellow ochre, and then a touch of raw umber. I'm going to add a little more yellow ochre. It's a little bit too gray. I want a little more saturation here. So you can see this color here. I'm going to add more yellow ochre to that. All right, I'm going to tap into the paint so that splays out the bristles. Get lots of little interesting patterns when you smush into the paint. And then basically there's going to be a tree line. There's a hill that's going to be coming across here. So just creating a couple little treetop shapes. So to do that, just tapping. And then I'll block down. So a lot of this kind of just like an afterthought, not a whole lot of detail. It just kind of breaks up the landscape and creates a little bit of distance. And you can kind of play around with shapes a little bit. Shouldn't be, again, super important. But what I want to do now, just want to block in and kind of create this hill shape now. All right, next I'm going to take my yellow ochre and cerulean blue. We're going to make a nice muted green color. I'll go a little ultramarine blue in there as well. And basically what I want to do now is just block in the rest. And this is just a base coat. I'm using my flat brush for this. Doesn't matter what color, what kind of brush you use. But we're just going to block in this little base coat. And we'll have that come up. Maybe kind of travel off into the distance there a little bit. All right, so just going to block in the rest here. Again, don't worry about how like thick the layer is. You want to get it thick enough so that the canvas isn't showing through. But we're not worried about the color so much. yet. It's just a little base coat that's a nice mid-tone that we will paint over a little bit later. So I'm going to have that hill go right up a little bit higher here. We'll block in here. All right, I'm going to let that dry before adding in my tree. All right, next I'm going to take a round brush, and I'm just going to take some raw umber and some of my ultramarine blue. And I'm going to start adding in the tree. So I'm going to start with the tree trunk. I'm going to find the center here and just go left of center. So just outside that left of center. What I'm going to do is start by painting in the trunk of the tree. And I'm also going to paint in a little bit of that shadow. And we'll go over the shadow to make it more green later. I'm just giving myself a good base here. All right, so from here, we've got our trunk. And what I want to do is just do a little basic, I'm going to add some water to my paint and just kind of give myself a basic structure. Okay, so really a basic, simple, just basically 3-4 lines coming up to create the basic structure of the tree. From here, and I want to block in the overall shape of my tree. So I'm going to take some cad yellow, ultramarine blue, and a little raw umber. Very dark green color. I'm going to start down low here, and I'm just going to tap in the overall shape here of my tree, starting at the bottom. So we've got some leaves coming across here. So tapping in frequently, building up. As the tree comes up here, starts to widen out. So the main focus here is to really block in the overall shape of the tree. And since we still have a lot to do with the background and everything, we can always adjust by poking in openings to the tree. So if you make the tree a little too thick, that's okay, because we can fix that later. Trying to get a nice dark background for the tree, or silhouette. So just twisting the brush in your fingers a little bit to create different patterns. Out towards the edges, we're tapping a little bit lighter. So that way we're getting some more sporadic or more see-through areas. Then in towards the middle here, we can go a little thicker. And just need to add some more paint to my palette. So I'm going to remix some more of that yellow, ultramarine blue, raw umber. And the top of the tree, once I kind of get some of the bulk of the tree in, I want to go right to the top and just kind of play around with the shape here. So I'm not really worried, again, like I mentioned earlier, about the sky openings in between the tree. I am, but I'm not worried about getting them perfect right now. What I'm mainly focused on is just getting the overall shape of the tree. I'm going to thicken up that trunk just a little bit. Okay, now I'm just going to go along, tap a little bit lighter along the edges of the tree. Start to shape it out just a little bit more. I'm going to have this come right to the edge here, go off the edge. I'm going to start to kind of curve some of the foliage down. All right, I'll block in a little bit more here. I'll leave a couple of those little openings. But I'm pretty happy with that overall shape. It will get adjusted a little bit as we go, but I like that it comes right off the edge over here. One thing, I do want to get it a little bit closer to this edge. Alright, so now you can see why we didn't, I'm going to get this over here right close to the edge too. Why we didn't do so much detail on the background, because now we've blocked in a large area. I'm just going to make the tree a little bit taller. So we've blocked in a large area. So we would have ended up just painting over a whole bunch of details that we spent a whole lot of time on. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to take that green color, add a little more yellow to it. And I'm going to go over this shadow here. So that was a little placeholder. And down here, we've got some shadows as well. I'm going to block those in with this green color. Then along the edge down here, I'm going to go in with some of that green color as well. Okay, then I'm going to take more yellow and now I'll block that in. In the areas next to the shadows. Okay, nice and quick. I like to do some directional brush strokes, so since we have this hill coming down, I'm going to do some curved brush strokes coming down. And we've got little spots of highlight here and there. Okay, I'll go back to that darker shadow color. And then I'll do another round with the more yellowish color. So I'm just trying to get this a little bit brighter. All right, I just want to go back to my shadow color one more time. Just kind of touch up out in front of the tree here a little bit. All right, so we'll play around with that now that we have a little bit of contrast here now and a little bit of highlight, which will help create a little bit of depth before we go too much further. But what I want to do next is just kind of let that dry. Then I'm going to start going into the background a little bit, adding in some brightness. Then we'll start doing the foliage. All right, next what I'm going to do is just brighten up the sky a little bit. I'm going to take a round brush. I'm going to take cerulean blue and white. I'm going to go a little bit lighter. And just going to block in the sky a little bit, and then, like I mentioned before, just kind of open up the tree in a few little spots. So just tapping. Okay, I'll do the same up here. I'm going to lighten up the sky a touch. And I'll go a little bit lighter still and come down here and then poke in a few spots here and there. And maybe over here I'll add in a little bit of blue, a little blue opening sky. All right, now I want to go much more white. I'm going to wipe my brush off. We're going to add some brightness to the clouds. So I want to just have a color that's slightly lighter than what's up here. And now I'm going to highlight out. We'll go, our light source is going to be right to left here. So should have started on this side. Wasn't thinking about it, but that's okay. Clouds a lot of times have a lot of reflected light, so we can get away with that. But I want to go a little bit brighter here. We'll start out on the right. Just kind of do a couple swirling brush strokes. That way we're getting a few little highlights in the clouds. And then, just like before, kind of opening up the tree a little bit here and there. And remember, we can always come back and do this a little bit more later after we do the foliage. All right, I'm going to focus more in on the clouds. So up here, we'll go highlight on this side. And then as we go to the left, we're kind of just allowing the color to thin out so it gets darker. Okay, I'm going to go lighter down here. Again, I'm focusing in on soft edges. Throw in a few little brighter spots on this side. See how much quicker this is than doing tons and tons of detail in the beginning, than having to come back and touch up. Okay, so I'll go even lighter now, a little bit more on the white side. And I'll just add a contour right in through here. Then I want to fade a little bit as we get over here to the left. Make sure we're carrying that bright stuff right through the foliage. We can always touch this foliage up later. All right, maybe I'll do a little kind of break off cloud right here. All right, I'm going to call that good. Now what I want to do is work on the foliage. All right, so what I'm going to do is take my ultramarine blue, cad yellow, and some raw umber. And we want a color that's slightly lighter than what's up here already. And our light source again is right to left. So I'm going to tap my brush, I'm going to twist it in my fingers, I'm going to highlight out towards that light source. And as I get over here on the left, I'm going to go a little bit more sporadic and less pressure on the brush. So if you look at the reference photo, there's lots of little dark shadows in between the bunches. So that's what we're trying to do. We're mostly getting the area blocked in, but we're leaving those little openings. So as we look at a reference photo, we're looking for some openings. So up here on this side, there's a big, this is all kind of blocked in. Down along here is as well. And then it starts to get a little bit more shadow in right through here. And then this part is highlighted again. couple little random highlights. Okay, a lot of this right here is dark, but this stuff out here is highlighted. Adding a little touch of water to the paint sometimes makes it a little bit easier to make that pattern. So in through here, nice and dark, and then right in the middle, the highlights pick up again. You can see how quickly this all comes together. It's very effective technique. It makes things look real without having to worry about painting with just a liner brush the whole time. Couple little sporadic highlights down there, a couple little highlights here and there. This is a lot of shadow right there. Then, as we go across, it's highlighted over here. Got a little highlight coming up through here. So working in these little bunches. Again, not trying to make it look exactly like the reference photo, but getting it close, that's all that matters. All right, so there's already some nice dimension there. What I'm going to do next is another layer on the ground to bring the value up there. I'm going to keep going back and forth. So I want to bring the value up on the ground, so I'm going a little bit more of that yellow. This time, get a little bit of texture in there, so doing some sideways brush strokes and then a little bit of tapping as well. So that way the tapping and the scrubbing side to side gets lots of little variation, which helps create more of a realistic look. Still following my brushstroke down the hill, so directional and flattening out towards the bottom. Okay, and I'm going to add some cerulean blue to that. So we're going to get a slightly different color Then kind of along the shadows, I want some of this bluish hue. I'll go a little more ultramarine blue, cerulean blue. And up here as the shadow kind of goes up over the hill, starts to get a little bit more bluish. So we're getting some good little textures in here. Same brush stroke as you go through that shadow. Then down here I'll do the same. Just getting a few bluish hues in here. Alright, so I'm going to clean my brush off. I'm going to let that dry before going on to my next layer. Alright, so we're going to do our second round here on the foliage. Again, taking the flat brush, some ultramarine blue, yellow. I'm going to add some more yellow because I've run out. And what I need to do is kind of push it a little bit brighter. I want to add raw umber in there. The raw umber is used to basically create more of a natural leaf color. So that's about as bright as I want to go, just a little bit brighter than what we have up there now. So again, tapping into the paint and then tapping onto the canvas, twisting the brush and the fingers a little bit, and start highlighting out towards our light source. So again, looking for those, basically those bunches of leaves that are highlighted. Again, twisting in my fingers. Okay, so you can see I'm going a little bit more careful this time. So even in these dark spots, you still want to do little transitionary bunches so it doesn't look like it's too contrived. And just a couple little spots down here. A couple little touches. Okay, and now I'm going to switch to my round brush because it's going to create a slightly different pattern. But I'm going to stick with that same color. I'm going to go a little bit more yellow. And go a little bit more ultramarine blue as well. Same type of thing, now I'm using a round brush, tapping into the paint. Getting a little bit different pattern here. Okay, so just really taking my time, picking out spots to block in and trying to make sure I leave some of those nice dark shadow areas. You can kind of curve some of the brush strokes down a little bit to give that almost like it's cascading here and there. Get a couple little pieces in here. All right, and I'm just going to bring the yellow up a little bit more and highlight out towards my light source a little bit. So I want to go away from my reference photo some. I want to emphasize the light a little bit more on this right hand side. So just a slight value shift. Mostly highlighting these groups, these bunches of leaves out towards the right hand side. Okay, I want to make sure the light kind of gets over here in a couple spots. Okay, and then I'm going to go with more yellow, a little bit of white. Same type of thing as before. Some sideways. All right, so some sideways brush strokes and some taps. Again, to get the textures. I'll go a touch more white. Just kind of block in a few little random variations. Okay, next I'm going to take a small round brush, take some raw umber, a little bit of white. Down here on the trunk of the tree. Just going to put a little bit of a highlight. I'll go a little bit more white and then just kind of indicate a little bit of light hitting here and there. Tap with my finger, soften that up a little bit. Okay, then I'll take a little bit of my raw umber, just fill in a few little branches going up through. Even if you don't see them in the reference photo, it's always nice to have a couple little random branches here and there. All right, I'm gonna let that dry. I'll go a little bit brighter on this first, right down here. All right, I'm gonna do another layer down here on the grass. So a little ultramarine blue, bunch of yellow, and we're going a little bit whiter now. Again, tapping a little bit, get some textures. Okay, so a little vertical tapping, and then some side to side. Still trying to create that shape of the hill coming down. So some directional brush strokes. Okay, and then I'm going to go a little bit of my cerulean blue, mix in with that color. Then again around the shadows, adding a little bit more of that bluish hue. And little bits of that here and there. I'm going to go a little more ultramarine blue. Then in this shadow here, going a little bit lighter. And same down here. Getting some textures. But now we're going a little bit lighter in value. Okay, then I'll go into that little brighter color again, kind of create a little transitional color. A few little spots in these shadows down here. I'm going to clean my brush off. I'm going to grab some of my raw umber, ultramarine blue, and I want a little bit of my yellow. Go a little bit darker. Just right in behind the tree. Okay, I'm going to go with my round brush again. I'm going to take that same shadow color, except I'm going to add more yellow, just a tiny touch of white. I'm going to tap in it. I've got my round brush again. Okay, I'll do just a couple more spots here. Going a little more sporadic here this time. So you can see very subtle shift in color. All right, so you can easily kind of overpaint this. I really want to avoid that. Just trying to hit some really random brighter spots. Just to get some final textures in there. I'm going to go with my raw umber and white. Go a little bit darker, so a little more raw umber. Just highlighting the front of the tree, making it look like some lights coming down through the leaves. Okay, last thing I'm gonna do, take some pure white and just hit a few spots on my clouds down here. Maybe a couple little spots up through the foliage. Okay, I'm going to go with my yellow, some white, I'm going to go a little bit more yellow. Going a little bit brighter with the white down here in this corner. So just trying to get a few more directional brush strokes, just almost dry brushing to allow some of those textures to stay. Okay, so that completes our painting lesson. If you have any questions, you can email me at tim@timgagne.com. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you again soon.